Hello, dear students of third prep science. Let's go to start our lesson today, as we have the first lesson in unit 3, as we will talk about the main principles of, which means the inheritance of the characters or traits from one generation to another. زي ما احنا عارفين احنا في مبادئ الوراثة النهارده هنتكلم عليها, as we have to know how can we obtain our characters or the traits from one generation to another. And we also we will know the types of traits أو أنواع الصفات أو الخصائص, as we have two types of the traits, as we have hereditary traits and acquired traits. Let's is meant by genetics as a branch of science أو علم الوراثة أو genetics. So here we have the lesson today زي ما احنا شايفين قدامنا على المونيتور. بيقول لي genetics as lesson 1 the main principles of heredity, المبادئ الوراثية للوراثة. So here we have the first point in our lesson today, as we have genetics. Genetics, which means علم الوراثة. So the definition of genetics, which means what, as we have, it is a branch of science. Studies the inheritance of what? Of characters through generations to explain the similarities and differences between or appear between the individuals. So here we will know now how can we define the genetics. Genetics, it is a branch of science, فرع من العلوم, studies the inheritance, وراثة, of characters, الصفات, through generations, عبر الأجيال, to explain what? The similarities and differences appear, بتظهر يعني between individuals أو between الأفراد. So we have here to know the kinds of traits, أنواع الصفات. We have the two main types of traits, as we have hereditary traits and acquired traits. Hereditary traits, which means the traits transfer from one generation to another. صفات هتنتقل من جيل إلى جيل. يبقى here we have to know traits are transmitted from one generation to another generation, or from the parents to their offspring, من الآباء إلى الأبناء. Also we have to know some examples about the hereditary traits. We have as the color of the hair, for example, لون الشعر, the color of the skin, لون الجلد, and the numbers of fingers, عدد الأصابع, and we have as tallness, shortness, and so on. So we know now what is meant by hereditary traits. Also we have to know what is meant by acquired traits, الصفات المكتسبة. Here we have the opposite definition, العكس على طول. يبقى traits are not transmitted from one generation to another. Are not transmitted from one generation to another, يعني ما انتقلتش من جيل إلى جيل. As we have many examples about that. As we have here, walking and playing football. So we learn how to walk. We learn how to read or write. نتعلم القراية, نتعلم الكتابة, نتعلم المشي. As playing football. Any skills in your life, أي مهارة, you learn it or you study this skill. So here we talk about what? We talk about the acquired traits. Can't be transmitted from one generation to another, as walking, playing football, and so on. So here, dear students, we know now how can we define genetics, اللي هو علم الوراثة, as we have a branch of science studies the of characters from one generation to another. Why? To explain the similarities and differences between the living organisms or between the individuals. عشان أعرف التشابهات والاختلافات between the living organisms. Also we have the kind of traits, أنواع الصفات. We have inherited traits or hereditary traits, صفات وراثية, and we have acquired traits, which have here inherited or hereditary traits as traits can be transmitted from one generation to another generation, from parents to offspring, like color of hair, color of skin, tallness, shortness, and so on. On the other side, acquired traits, صفات مكتسبة, as these traits can't be transmitted from one generation to another. ما بتتنقلش من جيل لجيل. As walking, writing, reading, playing football, all these skills we learn. How can we do these skills? احنا بنتعلمها، ما بنتولدش بيها. So now we know how can we deal with genetics, how can we deal with the types of traits. Another point in our lesson today, as we زي ما احنا شايفين قدامنا, give reason for the presence of similarities and differences in the individuals of the same species of living organisms. في تشابهات واختلافات between the individuals of the same species, من نفس السلالة أو نفس الفصيلة, of the living organisms. ليه احنا مختلفين عن بعض؟ So here we have the answer. Due to combination between male and female gametes forming zygote. As we studied before in the first term, we have half traits, نص الصفات, from male and the other from female. So here we have a combination between male and female gametes, and we know gametes has half number of chromosomes to form zygote as complete number of chromosomes. So we are different and we have some common points as similarities between the living organisms. Why? Due to combination between male and female gametes forming zygote, أو due to inheritance of traits from both parents. بناخد صفاتنا من both parents, من الأب والأم. Okay. The third point here, we have the Mendel as a godfather of the genetics, الأب الروحي لعلم الوراثة يعني. And we have here a question, as Mendel chosen the pea plant to conduct his research. ليه مندل اختار البي plant أو نبات البسلة to conduct his experiment? We have many reasons here. Number one, grow fast. Grow fast. بتكبر بسرعة. طبعا short life cycle. And this considered as advantage, ميزة. Number two, produce large number of plants. بيطلع لي عدد كبير من الplants as a second option here. The third option, flower is bisexual. Flower is bisexual, which means this flower can make cross أو auto pollination or self pollination. Okay? At the same time here, we have the third option here, able to make artificial pollination. We can interfere the pollination, نقدر نتدخل in the pollination and make artificial pollination between the living organisms, as we talk about the pea plant. The fifth option here, from the advantages points here, we have as contrasting traits. Contrasting traits. As we have tallness, shortness, purple flower, white flower, we have traits are opposite. So these traits can clear to examine the differences between the pea plants individuals. So if we have a give reason for, لو عندنا give reason for, as Mendel chosen the pea plant, اشمعنى اختار pea plant to conduct his experiments أو research. أقول له number 1 grow fast, has short life cycle. Number 2 produce large number of plants. Number 3 flowers is bisexual, as we can make self-pollination. And number 4 able to make artificial pollination. Number 5 contrasting traits, as we have opposite traits أو صفات متضادة between the individuals of the pea plants. Here we have two importance give reason for as number 1, number 2. We have number 1, as you see. Mendel let pea plant to make self-pollination several times. Mendel ساب نبات البسلة to make self-pollination several times, عدة مرات, through generations. Here to be able أو to be sure from the purity of the trait, عشان يتأكد من نقاء الصفة. يبقى number 1 Mendel let pea plant to make self-pollination several times. أقول له to be sure from the traits purity. يتأكد من نقاء الصفة. Number 2 we have Mendel removed the stamens or carpels from some flowers. Mendel عمل يعني option هنا أو step, as Mendel removed شال stamens, and we know stamens is the male reproductive organs in the flower, هو الميل. Or sometimes Mendel removed the carpels, شال الcarpels as a female reproductive organs in the flower. Why Mendel do like that? أقول له طبعا هنا to make cross pollination. To make cross pollination. Okay, so now we know 3 points. Mendel is the godfather of the genetics, هو المؤسس أو author of the genetics, علم الوراثة. And Mendel chosen the pea plant, اختار the pea plant. We know 4, 5 options. Number 1 produce large number of individuals, بيطلع محصول كتير. Number 2 contrasting traits, صفات clear contrasting traits, صفات متضادة باينة واضحة. Number 3 the flower is hermaphrodite or bisexual, الوردة نفسها فيها الميل والفيميل in the same flower, so we can make self-pollination. As we have number 4 flower able to make artificial pollination, we can interfere, ممكن نتدخل and make artificial pollination. At the same time the pea plant has short life cycle, or which means grow fast. We have maximum 2 months to do this experiment. So here Mendel choose the pea plant. At the same time Mendel doing some steps, عمل بعض الخطوات. Number 1 let the pea plants self pollination several times, مرات كتيرة, to be sure from the purity of the trait, عشان نتأكد ان الصفة نقية. Because we have 2 types of traits, عندنا نوعين من الصفات. we have pure or hybrid. We have صفة نقية أو صفة hybrid, which means هجين زي ما نقول. So Mendel let the pea plants to make several self-pollination to be sure from the purity of the trait. عشان نتأكد إن الصفة نقية. Number two, Mendel removed carpels from some flowers, شال الcarpels from some flowers, and remove stamens from other flowers to push أو to pea plant make cross pollination عشان يجبرها ان هي تعمل cross pollination. يبقى why Mendel stamens or carpels to make to make cross pollination. Okay, here we have another type or another point in our lesson today, as we have Mendel focusing about 7 traits or 7 characters, 7 صفات in the pea plants, as tall stem flower or white flower, as green yellow seed or green seed, as green pod اللي هو اللي بيسموه الكفر بتاع البسله اللي بره, green pod or yellow pod, and so on. So here we have, هنشوف قدام, the dominant traits and recessive traits. Dominant, which means صفة قوية, and here we have the other side, we have recessive traits. So what is meant by dominant trait? يعني ايه صفة قوية؟ trait that appears, تمام, if the gene is pure or hybrid. الصفة اللي بتظهر لو كان الجين نقي pure او hybrid, which means ان هو هجين, يعني has two states to appear, بتظهر في حالتين, عشان كده سميناها what we call this trait as a dominant trait. Trait appears if the gene is pure or hybrid. We have another point here, as we have is represented by capital letter. لما نيجي نعبر عن ال dominant trait we use capital letter. As number 1, here we have tall stem, so we have to represent by T capital. T capital. So we have pure tall stem, نقي. If we have T capital, T small, here we have hybrid tall stem, غير نقي أو هجين. We have yellow seed, yellow seed. So we have what we use here, yellow seed, so we have Y capital, Y capital. So we have pure yellow seed. If we have Y capital, Y small, we have impure or hybrid yellow seed. If we have red flower, or we can use here purple flower, purple flower. If we have, as we have مثلا P capital as pure, or P capital P small as hybrid. We have green pod, so we have G capital as pure green pod, وقلنا البود ده اللي هو الكفر of the seeds, or G capital G small as hybrid. So if we want to talk about the dominant trait, لو عايز اتكلم على dominant trait اقول له trait هتظهر. Trait appears if the gene is pure or hybrid, عشان كده بتبقى. We have another type of traits. We have recessive traits, as trait appears if the gene is pure only. هتظهر لو كان الجين نقي بس، لأن الريسيسيف which means صفة ضعيفة. So we represent by the recessive traits by using small letter, but small letter of what? Of the dominant trait. As we have tall stem, we have here T capital. So we have on the other side here, we have short stem, we have T small. T small. We have yellow seed. مثلا for example هنا هغيرها بس هنخليها ايه؟ green seed. Green seed. We have here what? We have here yellow seed as Y capital, Y capital. So we choose here Y small, Y small. خلي بالنا recessive traits takes the letter of dominant. بتاخد الحرف بتاع dominant trait but in a small form. In a small form. As we have purple flower, we have P small, P small. As green pod, نخليها ايه؟ yellow pod. هناك كان مين؟ اهو green pod is what? Is G capital. So we have to deal with yellow pod here as Y small. عفوا هتبقى G small, G small. يبقى نخلي بالنا ان الليتر هنا between if you want to compare عشان نعوز نقارن between the dominant trait و recessive trait. The dominant trait قوية يعني appears if the gene is pure or hybrid, has two options, but the recessive traits appear only or appears only if the gene is pure. Okay, how can we represent the dominant trait? We can represent the dominant trait by using capital letter. يعني tall يبقى T capital. طب لو هو tall pure يبقى T capital T capital. لو هو tall impure يعني hybrid هجين هيبقى T capital. طيب if we have short stem، لو انا هتكلم على short stem يبقى tall T capital، يبقى short stem T small. But short stem is recessive يعني appears only if the gene is pure. يبقى we have to represent by two small letters as T small T small. Okay؟ يعني في الاكزام في الامتحان if we have مثلا for example short stem, if we have green seed, if we have white flower, recessive traits. طيب as these recessive traits appear if the gene is pure. يعني عارف لو قال لي short stem هقول له T small T small. لو قال لي مثلا for example green seed هقول له Y small Y small. Why؟ قال لي عشان اقول له ان هي الدوميننت يبقى Y capital، يبقى الجرين سيد هي recessive تبقى Y small. At the same time we have purple flower as you like. يعني ممكن واحد يقول لي purple flower ينفع we can represent by R capital. اوكي يبقى الوايت flower R small and so on. يبقى هنا we can differentiate between dominant trait and recessive trait. The definition and how can we represent each one of them. اوكي لو شفنا هنا بقى مع بعض مندل's first law، قانون مندل الاول. first law of مندل اسمه law of segregation، قانون الانعزال او العزل. يعني قال ايه مندل؟ قال if two individuals are، خلي بالنا بقى، pure and contrast in pair of traits. يعني لو في فردين اوكي مالهم؟ قال ان هم pure انقياء dominant او recessive، contrast يعني ضد بعض في ايه؟ في pair of traits. the dominant trait appears in the first generation with ratio 100%. مين اللي هيكسب في الفيرست جنريشن؟ الدوميننت traits appear او trait appears in all individuals، كل الافراد في الجيل الاول. اوكي while the two traits، كل الصفات الاثنين appear in the second generation with ratio 3 to 1. 3 to 1 as here we have 3 1. طب يا ترى مين ال 3؟ الدوميننت ولا الريسيسيف؟ يبقى 3 is dominant and what 1 is recessive. As we have here for example as a problem، يعني ناخد مسألة عن الموضوع ده. لو قلت له we have 2 P plants. 2 فردين من نبات البسلة. One has tall stem. طبعا طالما tall stem ده dominant، يبقى لازم في الامتحان هيقول لي pure او hybrid. اوكي، pure with another has short stem. short ايه؟ stem. طبعا short stem is recessive, and we know recessive traits appear if the gene is pure only. فانا مش محتاج يكتب لي جنبها pure or hybrid. Here we have 3 steps. عندنا 3 خطوات. parents, gametes, F1 which means the first generation، الجيل الأول. Number 1 we have, as you see, we have tall stem pure. So we have T capital, T capital. With short stem, as we have T small, T small. Because we know the short stem as a recessive, and we take or represent the recessive traits from the dominant trait letter by small letter. Here we have gametes. Gametes, so we have to segregate. نفصل بقى. يبقى T capital and T capital. With T small and T small. As gametes, we know gametes have half number of chromosome. Here we have F1, الجيل الأول. Just we make a mathematical distribution as we do it in algebra or in mathematics. Here number 1 with number 1, then number 1 with number 2, وبعد كده 2 with 1, then 2 with 2. يبقى عملنا ايه؟ خدنا 1 with 1, then 1 with 2, then we have to take 2 with 1, then 2 with 2. We have 4 individuals. عندنا 4 أفراد هنا. Number 1 is T capital T small. Number 2 is T capital T small. Number 3 is T capital T small. واحد يقول لي T small T capital، اقول له لا. If you have لو عندنا حرفين زي بعض we will write the capital before the small letter. Okay? Number 4 T capital T small. Okay. So we have here we have tall hybrid. طويل بس مش نقي. tall hybrid. tall hybrid. tall hybrid. يبقى we have how many percent؟ اقول له 100% tall hybrid. طويل بس غير نقي. So here we have the first generation as we have زي ما احنا شايفين قدامنا 100% appears in the first generation with ratio what؟ 100%. اتحقق. While the 2 traits appear in the second generation with ratio how many؟ 3:1. So let's go to deal with the second generation. تعالوا نشوف السكند generation. We just take 2 individuals. هاخد 2 من دول مثلا and we will make cross، نعمل ما بينهم تزاوج. as you see هنا هنعملها في البيج دي لوحدها. parents T capital T small with T capital T small. tall hybrid. Okay? Gametes. We know gametes have half number of chromosomes, and F2 which means the second generation. Here we have T capital T small with T capital T small. We segregate، بنعزل، بنفصلهم. Then like the first one هنعمل ايه؟ هقول له the first with the first, then the first with the second, then the second with the first, and the second with the second as a distribution. So here we have T capital, T capital. Then here we have T capital, T small. And we have T capital, T small, and the last one is T small, T small. Here we have what? We have tall stem, tall stem, tall stem, and here we have short stem. So the ratio here is what? Is 3 to 1. Or we can represent by percentage as 75% and 25%. يعني الثلاث ارباع والربع. So here dear students, we know now how can we deal with the problems. ازاي نتعامل مع المسائل. Dominant trait may be pure or hybrid, but the resistance is pure. يعني لو قال لي white مثلا flower، مش محتاج يقول لي pure او impure يعني hybrid، لان انا عارف ان دي recessive، فلازم during the exam I will write red as opposite of R، يعني R small R small مثلا. If we have short stem T small T small. If we have green seeds Y small Y small. خلي بالنا عشان في ناس pea plant او seed is green، احنا عارفين we eat pea for maturity، بناكلها قبل النضج، عشان كده هي after maturity او بعد ما بتنضج بيبقى لونها اصفر. as a bean زي الفول maturity بيبقى لونه براون، بيبقى لونه بني. but we eat bean الفول اللي هو green اللي هو بيسموه فول حراتي. فاحنا we know the trait، بنعرف الصفه after maturity بعد النضج. فالبي بلانت اللي هو البسله ده dominant trait in seeds، الصفه القويه في السيدز ان هو يبقى يلو، يعني Y capital Y capital او Y capital Y small. but the recessive ان هو after maturity بعد النضج still green Y small Y small and so on. Okay, so here we have the as you see here Mendel's second law، القانون الثاني لمندل. قال ايه؟ اللي هو independent assortment. يبقى number one here we have اللي هو law of segregation as a first law. Here we have independent assortment او زي ما بيقولوا العوامل المنعزله، يعني كل صفه او each trait inherit independently، يعني كل صفه بتتورث لوحدها، مش لازم تبقى connect او link with other trait، مش لازم تبقى مرتبطه بصفه ثانيه. فقال ايه؟ if two individuals، حلو قوي، pure and contrast. طب ما هو like the، بصوا معايا كده، like the segregation. ما هو قايل برضو هنا، قال ايه؟ قال pure وقال ان هما contrast، صح؟ شيل كده عشان تبقوا شايفين معايا. يبقى قال pure and contrast but in pair of traits. هنا بقى هيقول ايه؟ pure and contrast in pairs of traits. in a pairs. Here we have in pair of traits. خلي بالنا من الديفرنس او differences between first and second law. Okay, the dominant trait او traits عشان هم طبعا more than one pair appears او appear in the first generation with ratio 100%. تعالوا نرجع تاني اهو ratio 100%. while the two traits appear in the second generation as ratio what? 3 to 1. هنا بقى قال ايه؟ what ratio in the second generation is 9 to 3 to 3 to 1. Some students why 9 to 3 to 3 to 1؟ هقول له عشان if we make just simplify 9 over 3 equal 3 3 over 3 equal 1. Okay dear students, here we have phone caller Nada from raise your voice ندى، ارفعي صوتك.
الو
الو،
هذا شو
ممكن بس ترفعي صوتك عشان مش سامعك.
الو
ايوه سامعك كده، اتفضلي.
الو
ايوه اتفضلي يا ندى.
الو
واضح ان ندى عندها مشكله في الصوت. I hope ندى can call us later. اوكي، تتصلي تاني، ولو عندك اي question or any difficult point in this syllabus we can explain this. نبص تاني هنا. زي ما احنا شايفين عندنا if we make just simplify، هنا عندنا 3 to 1 اهي زي ما هي اهي. And here by simplifying we have 3 to 1. So the first law like the second law, but here we talk about independent assortment. يعني each trait inherit independently، كل صفة بتتورث لوحدها. And here we have the individuals are contrast in pairs of traits، مش pair واحدة، براحتنا بقى 2 pairs 3 pairs 4 pairs. برضو الدوميننت trait will appear in the first generation with percentage أو ratio 100%، تظهر لوحدها. While the two traits appear in the second generation with ratio 9 to 3 to 3 to 1، اللي هي simplifying to as what here as 3 to 1. So now we can know the difference or the differences between law of segregation and what and independent assortment. Here we have a note هنا مهمة جدا، زي ما هنشوف دلوقتي مع بعض، ان similar ان any trait represented by two factors او two letters، اي صفة بنعبر عنها ب two letters او two factors. السيميلر بتبقى pure، الديفرنس بتبقى هايبريد هجين. زي ما قلنا من شوية، لو انا قلت مثلا R capital R capital اللي هي نعتبرها purple flower، اوكي. هنا R small as white flower. هنا if we have purple flower but hybrid يبقى R capital R small. طب ينفع recessive يبقى hybrid؟ اقول له لا، هنا مش هكتب recessive، لان recessive appears only if the gene is pure. اوكي اوكي. طبعا دي البروبلم دي احنا حليناها وعرفنا ان الفيرست جنريشن بيبقى 100% والسكند جنريشن as 3 to 1. Here we have dominant and recessive traits in human. الصفات الدوميننت المنتشره. We talk about the Middle East هنا، خلي بالنا بنتكلم على منطقه الشرق الاوسط يعني، اللي هو عندنا يعني. الدوميننت in human is curly hair، الشعر المجعد هو الصفه الدوميننت. انما الريسيسيف اللي هي straight hair، الشعر اللي هو الناعم او المفرود يعني. Here we have another as we have wide eyes، العينين الواسعه بتبقى عندنا dominant trait، while the small eyes او narrow eyes، العينين الضيقه خليها narrow eyes افضل. narrow eyes is what is recessive. Here we have the dark eyes او العينين الغامقه dark eyes، العينين اللي هي بتبقى غامقه هي الدوميننت. Here we have the colored eyes، العينين الملونه بتبقى recessive. As we have broad nose، الانف العريضه سوري، البرود نوز بتبقى dominant. الثين نوز المناخير او الانف الرفيعه بتبقى recessive. هنا we talk about the broad lips اللي هي الشفايف العريضه هي dominant، هي الصفه القويه. وعندنا thin lips هي recessive. As you see here we have no freckles. عدم وجود نمش ده dominant, but freckles اللي هو النمش طبعا ده recessive يعني صفة مش منتشرة عندنا. We have ability to roll the tongue, ان احنا نتني لساننا دي dominant. We can able to roll the tongue is recessive. And we have here as attach earlobe, الودان اللي هي قريبة من السكالم جمجمة دي dominant. As separated earlobe is recessive. Here we have the tallness يعني طول القامة هو الدوميننت والشورتنس هو الريسيسيف. Okay, dear students, here we have to end our episode today. We have just little point. Next episode we will talk about the DNA and the structure of DNA at the same time, and how can we modify some plants to obtain some vitamins or some traits. At the same time we will talk about the genome or the genes map of the human. Until we meet again, thank you, see you, goodbye.